Okay, good morning, good morning, everyone. So today we'll continue on CSS, and for this class, we'll be treating CSS text and font properties. So basically, these properties are the types that affect the text and the font of HTML documents directly. By that, I mean the actual content that is being rendered on the screen. So for today's content, we have the first section, which is the text properties. Under this section, we'll get to know what text properties are, and we'll also learn, you know, the text proper the text properties that are under this section. That's the text color, the text alignment, the text decoration, text spacing, text shadows, and text transformation. So, mind you, in the course of this lesson, some of these properties are not actually properties, like, for instance, the text color and the text alignment. So, these two properties are actually like a compound name for some other properties we'll be seeing. And also, after this, we'll have a quick demo on how each of these properties work on VS Code. So, for the second section, we have the font properties. So, we'll get to know more we said get to know more about the front properties, and here we can see that there are different for front properties. We have the font family, the font style, the font weight, and the font size. So mind you, the font properties are not limited to these four, but these four are like the very essential properties you need to know about. So along your journey in learning about CSS, you can also check online and you discover that there are more font properties in CSS. So we would also look at the font shorthand property. So we all know what we mean by a shorthand property. It's like, a property that allows you to use these independent properties in one syntax. And by using the shorthand, it saves time and is very effective. And also, we'll be seeing a quick demo on the font properties. So without wasting our time, because you know time is already gone. So we're in the first section, which is the text properties section. So what are text properties? So text properties are properties that are used for formatting text. By that we mean they define how a text should appear on the web browser. So basically these properties enable you to put changes on the text, and it gives you the power to make the text appear the way you want it on the screen. So under this section, we can see that there are different text properties in CSS. So the first property we have here is the text color. The next property we have is the text alignment, which is followed by the text decoration property, then the text spacing, the text shadow, and the text transformation. So we have the text color property, which is composed of two other properties. So as I said earlier, before, the text color property isn't an actual property. It's just a compound name of the background color and the color property. So the background color property and the color property are the actual properties that you can use to style in CSS. So here we have the background color property. I believe we are all familiar with this already in some previous classes we've done before. So this property is used to set the background color of an element. So this property is actually what is used to style the content area of that particular HTML content. And with this property, you can change the background color of any element. So from the example on the screen, you can see the syntax for this property. It's starting out with background dash color, and then you can assign it any color format you want. By that, we already know what the color formats are: the hexadecimal value color format, the RGB value, the RGBA, the HSL, the HSLA. So the background color accepts all color formats in this property. So next we have the color property. So this particular property is quite different from the background color, as this property allows a user to change the color of the actual text itself. So as we all know from previous classes we've held before, most of the text by default are rendered in black color. But with this property, you actually get the power to change the color of the text however you want it. So if you don't, if there's a case where you don't want to, make use of the color rendered by HTML, which is black, you can get to define the color you would want by using this syntax, as we can see in the example. So from the example, you can see that the syntax starts with the word color, and then you would assign it a value which has to be a color format. So the next group of property we have is the text alignment property. So this property is composed of the following properties, which are the text align property, the text direction, and the vertical align. So the text alignment property here, you know, is composed of these three properties. I will be seeing them in the next slide. So first we have the text align property. So this property is used to set the horizontal alignment of a text. So with this property, you could set the alignment to be either on the left side or the right side or centered. So by default, the text align for most property is usually on the left. But with this property, you can actually change the alignment of the text. Probably if you want it to be centered, you can make it centered. And also if you want it to be on the right side of the screen, this property would enable that for you. Next, we can see the syntax for this in the example, and it begins with text align. And you would also notice that for the example, the text align is assigned the value of center. So what this would actually do when written on VS Code, it would actually take any text that has this property to the middle of the screen. So we'll be seeing more of this later on. Next, we have the text direction. So the text direction property is used to change the direction of the text. So what this property basically does is it changes the direction of the text that is being rendered on the screen. So by default in HTML, any text you render on the screen always starts on the left hand side. If you noticed very well, it always begins on the left. But with this property, you can actually get to, decide if you want it to be on the right hand side of the screen. So when a particular element is attached with this property, you can either have it to be on the left hand side or on the right side of the screen. And as you can see here in the example, we've assigned the text direction property the value of RTL, which actually means right to left. So having if we were to have this on VS Code, you basically have your text to actually move from the right hand side of the screen to the left hand side. But by default, the original text direction is actually LTR, which is left to right, which is why whenever you render any HTML element on the web browser, it always begins on the left hand side of the screen. So it goes from left to right. So we'll be seeing more of this when we get to the practical session of today's class. Lastly, we have the vertical align property. So this property is quite similar to the text align. The only difference here is that the vertical align is used to set the vertical alignment of the text, while the text align property is used to set the horizontal alignment of that same text. So with this property, you actually get to set the alignment of the text vertically on the screen. And from the example we have, we can see that the vertical align is assigned the value of text top. So the text top value would actually take the text a little higher than other text elements around it. So we'll get some of this later on. So the third property we have is the text decoration property. So the text decoration property is a shorthand property that enables a user to add a decoration to the text. So we'll be seeing more properties under the text decoration properties. The text decoration property is a shorthand property for the following properties. So you can see that within the text decoration are other properties, and they can be seen as the text decoration line, the text decoration color, the text decoration style, and the text decoration thickness. So these properties we can see on the screen are actually under the text decoration property, and we'll be seeing each of these properties individually. So next we for the first property under the text decoration is the text decoration line. So this property is used to add a line decoration to a text. Yeah. So basically this property might seem a bit similar to the border property because it's used to add a line to the text. The only difference here is the fact that for the border property, the lines that are seen on the screen are going to be, surrounding the text. But the text decoration line actually gives you a way to have a line crossing the text or being below the text or being above. So from the example we have, the text decoration line is assigned the value of underline. So what this basically we do when written on VS Code is that when the text is rendered on the screen, you would notice a line will be at the base of the text, almost like a border bottom, but it's not a border, it's just the text decoration line. And other values under the text decoration line are the underline, the strike through, which would actually be have the line crossing the text. Don't worry, we'll see more of this when we get to the practical session of today's class. So the next property we have under the text decoration is the text decoration color property. So I believe we all know what this means. Whenever a property has color attached to it, it's basically used to serve one purpose, which is to change the color of that property. So this property is used to set the color of the text decoration line. So basically the text decoration property is quite dependent on the first property. So without the line, that's the first one we saw, this property might not work. But then we all know now that this particular property is used to set the color of the text decoration line. And from the example we have, you can see that we've assigned it a hexadecimal value of hashtag ABABCD, which is actually represented by a gray color. That's a light gray color for this example. So we'll get to see more of this later on. Everything. So the next property under the text decoration is the text decoration style. So this property is used to define the style of the text decoration line. So basically, this particular property actually helps you to define the kind of decoration you want on the text decoration line property. So it's almost similar to the border style, and I think they both have the same values of dashed, dotted, solid, and all of that. So with this property, you can define the style of the text decoration line you want. Probably you want a piece of dashed line, a piece of dotted lines. With this property, all that can be possible. So the next and the final property under the text decoration is the text decoration thickness property. So this property is used to set the thickness of the text decoration line. So what this basically does is that it increases the thickness of is used to set the thickness. So it's used to determine how thin or how thick the decoration line would appear. So this particular property is quite similar with the border width property. So basically from what we've learned up until this moment, we can see that both the border property and the text decoration line property, they are quite similar, but then at the same time they are also different and they serve different purposes too. So from the example we have here, we initialize the text decoration thickness to be 5 pixels. So basically what this will do is that it's going to make the text decoration line to be 5 pixels in thickness. So we'll be seeing all this in the practical session and you would see how they all appear on the screen. So the text decoration shorthand property declares its property in the order of text decoration line, decoration color, text decoration style, and text decoration thickness. Yeah. So the text decoration property, as we all know, is a shorthand property for the other properties we've talked about already. And in the order of this, we have the shorthand to actually assign values to each of these properties in a particular order, starting from the text decoration line, which is followed by the color, the style, and then the thickness property. So in the example you can see below on the screen, we have the text decoration property to start with the underline value. So the underline value actually is represented by the text decoration line, which is the first property. Then it's followed by the value of hashtag ABABDC, which is a hexadecimal color format, and this is represented as the text decoration color. Then thirdly, you can see the dotted value, which is represented as the text decoration style property in this shorthand property. And lastly, we have 5 pixels, which is represented by the text decoration thickness. So this would actually mean, so you are basically going to have a text that would have an underline with a light gray color in dotted style and 5 pixels of thickness. So that's how the example for this particular shorthand would appear on the screen. And I think we are done with text decoration. So let's move on to the next properties under text properties. So the next property we have is the text spacing property. So the text spacing property is composed of four other properties which we can see on the screen. And the very first property here is the text ident, which is followed by the line height, then the word spacing, and lastly the letter spacing property. So we'll be seeing each of these properties individually in the next slide. So the first property we have here is the text ident property. So this property is used to define the indentation of the first line of the text, and then basically you can see it the example for this property. We have the text ident to be assigned the value of 30 pixels. So what this property actually does is that it adds a kind of indentation to the text. So by default, we have the p tag. The p tag by default by HTML actually has an amount of space it keeps when being rendered on the screen. But with this particular property, you can actually increase the amount of space you want, however you want it. So for this example, we have the text ident to be 30 pixels. So what this would actually do is that if we're to have a p tag which was rendered on the web browser, it's going to add 30 pixels to the default indentation of that particular element. So this is basically going to create 30 pixels worth of space that's from the left hand side of the screen where the text starts from. So the next property we have is the line height property. And this property is actually used to determine the amount of space between two or more lines of text. So by lines of text, we are basically talking about the contents that are being rendered by HTML elements. So we all know that the p tags are block level elements. So if there was a situation where you rendered two p tags, you would notice that you would have a line of text be rendered on the screen. That's for the first p tag, and the second p tag will have its own line of text being rendered under the first line of text. So the amount of space that is between these texts vertically is actually known as the line height. So by default, HTML assigns this particular element an amount of space. But if for your own jurisdiction you decide to you want to increase or reduce the amount of space between the two lines of text, it is possible with the line height property. And from the example we can see here, the line height property is assigned a value of 1.8, which is a decimal value. So this property would actually let you determine the amount of space you want between these lines of text. Next, we have the word spacing property. So the word spacing property is used to define the space between words within a text. So this particular property actually works within the elements that are being rendered on the screen by the text elements. And already the popular text elements we have are the paragraph elements and the heading elements. So basically what this does is that with this particular property, you can actually increase the amount of spacing you want between, each of the words that are being rendered on the screen. So from the example we have, the word spacing syntax is actually assigned a value of 10 pixels. So what this will basically do is that by default, HTML has an amount of space it assigns to every word that is printed on the screen. But with this particular word spacing, you can either get to increase that amount of space or reduce it to the one you want. So by using this example, you're going to have 10 pixels worth of space being added in between each word that is being rendered on the screen. So that's what the word spacing property actually does in CSS. So lastly, under the text spacing property, we have the letter spacing property. Yeah. So this particular property is similar to the word spacing property. The only difference here is that this particular property is used to define the space between the characters of each of those words. So basically, when you render a particular text element on the screen, probably a paragraph or a heading, you would notice that the letters within each word are actually defined. They actually have a defined amount of space between them, although it's a very, very small space, which would actually make the entire word look the entire letters look joined together to form a word. But with this property, you can actually increase or reduce the space between each letters of this word. So that's what the letter spacing property does for you here. So from the example we have, you can see the letter spacing syntax, and it is assigned the value of 6 pixels. So we'll get to see how all of these spacing properties actually work when we get to the practical section of today's class. So the fifth text property we have is the text shadow property. So this property is used to add a shadow to the text, and this property is always declared horizontally and vertically in its syntax. So from the example we have, you can see the text shadow is assigned 5 pixels, 5 pixels red. So the first 5 pixels here actually represents how it would be declared horizontally, and the next one, you know, represents how it would be declared vertically. So one thing you should know is that from the example here, you can see that both the horizontal and the vertical, they have the same values, but then they do not necessarily need to have the same values. They can have different values, but one thing you must make sure of is the fact that both of them are declared within this syntax, and also they can be declared without adding a color to it. So by doing so, you'd only have just 5 pixels and 5 pixels. But also this property allows you to add a particular color of shadow you want, which is why we have the red color being assigned to it. So basically, this property also adds an effect to the text shadow, which is meant to be the fourth value here. That is in between the horizontal and the vertical declaration and the color declaration. So I'll be adding that to this example when we get to when we get to our VS Code section. So the last text property we have here is the text transformation property. And this property is used to convert the letters of a text to uppercase, lowercase, or capitalized form. So that's what this property does. And from the example here, we can see that the text transformation properties assign the value of uppercase. So by default, depending on how you render your HTML content on the screen, with this property being assigned the value of uppercase, it will actually render all your content in uppercase format, and it could also have the value of lowercase or capitalize. So here we have a quick demo on the text properties. So without wasting time, we'll be going into how each of these properties actually work. So let's get to it. Okay, so for this, we'll be creating a new folder for the text properties with.
Please,
Let's
can you increase the font of your editor? Thank you.
okay. Okay, can you see it now?
and it's a bit tiny. So I don't know if you can increase the size of it. You can zoom it out. That's what I'm requesting. But if you can't, you can continue. I just have to manage.
Okay. So I'll see if I can do that very soon.
Sorry. Edward, can you hear me?
It's the index.html. Next we have the CSS. So we'll be starting with the HTML file. We'll be using the boilerplate for this. Okay, so I hope it's clearer now. So for this, we'll be starting with the p tags. Tree CSS text. So we'll save this open with live server. So for now, yeah, so for now we've not added any property to the p tags, which is why they appear like this. So I'll increase the font of this so everybody could see this. So we would assign the first paragraph tag a class name. So the class name we'd use here would be sale. Yes, sale. Do you want to learn Spanish faster? ¿Quieres aprender español más rápido? Maybe you've taken classes in school or have tried one of the many languages. Okay, okay, we need to link our CSS to this. This style.css. Yeah, so we'll actually be referencing this paragraph tag with the class name. So back to our CSS. So be dot seal. Then we have the curly braces, and then we can actually have our property and value for CSS style. So we'll start with the text color property, and like I said, the text color is actually a group of the background color and the color property for style. So for the background color, we're already familiar with this. Assign this to be, let's use the RGB. For the red, we'll have this to be 45. Green will be 117. Blue 30. So we save this. Noticed a difference in background color. Okay, yeah, so this is how the background color property works, and as you can see, it actually styles the content area of this particular element rendered on the screen. So the next property would be added would be to change the actual color of this text. So as you can see, by default HTML assigns every text a black color, but with the color property we can actually change the text color to any color we want. So let's go back to our CSS. So here we would have the color to be assigned the value of, let's use Azure. So if we save this, you will notice that the color of the text will be changed to a white color, something close to white, but not white exactly. Yes, so now you can see how the color property actually works. So for the person who asked about changing the color of a text, this is how you do it using the color property in CSS. So now we have an azure color property which is close to the white color in between or inside a blue background. So the next property we'll be looking at is the text align property. So back to CSS, the very first property we had under the text align group is the text align property itself. So I made mention that this particular property can be used to align the text however you want it on the screen. So by default, the text align for most properties are assigned a value of left, but now we can actually decide to have it on the center of the screen or on the right. So for this, we'll be assigning it the value of center. You will notice that the text we have in the blue background would appear to be in the center of the content area. Okay, yes, so this is basically how the text center property works. And now we have our text to be in the middle of the blue background. Now, mind you, this entire background area is still the content area, but now we don't have our text being, appearing on the left hand side, but now we have it to be in the center of, the background color. So the next value we'll be assigning to this property would be the right value. So we'll assign it this the value of right, and you'd now see that you'd have the text to be on the right hand side of the screen. Okay, yeah. So this is exactly what the right value would actually do to the text align property. So now we have this to be on the right side of the screen as opposed to when we have had it to be at the center. So basically the text align works with three major properties: the left, the right, and the center. Although there is also one more property called the justify property, but I think that one works with some other superior elements like the div and the span elements. But let's try it out and see. So we save this. Okay. So this property still has our content to be on the left hand side of the screen. So I think this particular value actually works, with some other superior elements. But just know that if you want to, have your text in the center of the screen, all you need to do is to align the center value to the text align property. And if you want it to be at the right side of the screen, all you just need to do is to assign the right value to the text aligned. So I think that's that for text align. The next one we have is the vertical align. So would actually be using the default HTML value for this, which is left. So this would also give us what we had before, left hand side.
How far? No, no, that's us. Oh, you told that from me, right? Okay.
So the next property would be
Exactly.
seen under the text alignment would be the vertical align property.
Okay, okay. All right, no problem.
So as we all know, this
All right,
basically
thank you.
makes
Thank you very much.
changes to the particular
All right,
text
yeah.
vertically on the screen, unlike the one we just saw some seconds ago. It makes changes horizontally, that's from left to right, but this actually makes changes vertically, that's from the top to the bottom. So we are going to have some amount, some inline elements in between this. So we're using this small key better still. Let's use a heading to, so now we are going to add a small tag to this. So if we open with the live server, okay, so you have this to appear this way. So use the p tags. Okay, yeah. So this particular text that we have here, which is rendered by the small element, is what we'll be using, is where we'll be applying our vertical align on. Okay, let's change this. So back to our CSS. We're going to reference this by the tag name, which is small, the braces, and then we'll have the vertical align. So you can see the values we have here for vertical align. We have the baseline, the bottom, the sub, the super, text bottom, and text top. For this, we'll be having the value of text top. And you would actually notice a difference in the alignment of the text with other text also. So if we save this and go back to our web browser, now you can see that the HTML text is a little higher than the other text on the screen. So you can see that the other text they actually end, they actually have a particular space where they stop. on the screen, but then the HTML actually levitates some step higher, you know, within this entire line of text. So that's how the vertical align works. And also, if you're assigning the value of text bottom, you would actually have this HTML text to go lower than the other text around it. So we have this to be assigned the value of text bottom. Okay. Okay. Okay, so basically we are supposed to have the HTML text going lower than the other elements here. But then I really don't know why it isn't, you know, working. But then just know that with the vertical align element, you can actually align any HTML content vertically on the way you want it to either be higher or lower than other elements. So let's try out another property, another value for this property. Okay, I think it's baseline that does that. Okay, it still doesn't. So yeah, I really don't know why, but then the virtual align is, used to align the property vertically on the screen. So for now, I think the text top actually works fine, but for the text bottom, we can actually just excuse that for now. And let's move on to, another property under the text alignment. So I think the next one we have is line height. Okay, so for this we are going to have multiple p tags. Let's use some Lorem text. So this particular text is just a random text generator, so don't really focus on the actual content. What we should be focusing here is how the particular property we want to look at would actually work within these elements. So here we'll be having the p tag. Before then, if we were to save this and render it on the browser, they would all appear to be in this particular, arrangement. So you can see there's an amount of space between each of these text. So the line height will basically be used to either increase this space we have here or reduce it. So we'll have the line height to be, let's say, 20 pixels. Okay, so I'm not sure there's a space that is very noticeable. Okay, yes, so you can see how the line height property actually works. So now between this p tag, we have a huge amount of space here as opposed with the default amount of space that HTML gives to this particular element. So that's how the line height actually works. So you can determine the amount of space you want between each of these elements as you can see on the screen. So let's try to go somewhere lower than that. 4 pixels. Yeah. So you can see now that the text on each line are now closer than ever before. So that's basically how the line height property actually works. You can either increase or reduce it depending on your own preference of how you want the spacing to be between each of these lines of text. So that's basically the last property we have under the text alignment, and next we'll be moving into the text decoration property. Let's cancel all of this. So we'll also remove the line height. Let's just use the default that HTML provides. So for this we'll be referencing another p tag, but this time with an ID name. We'll call this decor. Save. So we all know how to do this. Now the hashtag, then the ID name, and curly braces follow up. And now we can actually start, styling with a text decoration property. So the first we'll be looking into the text decoration line. So like I said earlier before, this particular property is quite similar to the border property, but then this property has values that can appear in different forms. You can have a line above the text, underneath the text, or even right through the text. So we'll be looking into each of these values and we'll be seeing how they appear on the web browser. So the first we'll be seeing is the overline value. So we'll save this, open with live server, and you can see that in this paragraph we have a line directly above it. So this is what the overline value would give you. So without wasting time with this, you'd be changing this to the underline. You basically know what this would do. It would make the line appear directly under the text. So now you can see that there's a difference between the text decoration line and the borderline. So the borderline basically is good. Basically, from what we learned, is a particular line that would appear outside the padding area. you know. But this particular text decoration line appears very close to the text, almost like it is within the content area of this text. So you can see now that the text decoration line and the border line, they are quite different, irrespective of the fact that they can actually appear on different, you know, sides of the text. That's the top and the bottom. And lastly, we'll be seeing the strike through value, which appear differently. Function line, okay, yeah. Oh, it's called the line through. Thought it was a strike through. So if we save this and we go back to our browser, now you can actually see a line striking through the text. That's now it's the line isn't at the top or at the bottom, it's directly at the middle of the entire text. It's almost like something representing a kind of cancellation. The way you would have it when you're writing on a paper, you just decide to draw a line to cancel that particular text you've written. And that's how you also have it here in HTML. And this can be done using, the CSS property of text decoration line. So this is basically how we have the text decoration line. Let's quickly look at other text decoration properties. So we change this to the underline. And next we'll be seeing is the text decoration color. So as we all know, this particular property will actually change the color of the text decoration line, which by default is a black color. So for this we'll be using the brown color. If we are to open it our live server, now you can see that the color of the line we have directly under the text is in brown color. So this is how this color property actually works. And like I said before, it can accept of color formats, so including the hexadecimal value, the HSL value, the RGB, the RGBA, the HSLA. All of them can be accepted within the text decoration color property. So the next one we'll be seeing is the text decoration style. So this has values of dashed, dotted, double, solid, wavy. So this particular one is actually similar with the border style property. So let's use the wavy value and see how would have the line to appear on the screen. Okay, so this is basically what this style property does. So like I said, you can actually determine the kind of style that you want the line to appear with. So this is actually the wavy style that is being enabled on the text decoration style property. So we can try some other ones like dashed. This would also give you something like this. And lastly, let's touch the dotted value. So this also will give you the same, you know, a different kind of style. So the last property we haven't touched is the text decoration width, which would actually, determine how thick you want the line to appear. Okay, sorry, that's actually the text decoration thickness property. So for this, we'll be having this to be 10 pixels. We'll save this and go back, to our browser, and you can see how thick each of these circles are, which are under the dotted style. So that's basically how, this text decoration properties actually work. And then lastly would be touching the text decoration shorthand. So we all know that the shorthand follows a particular order. So we'll be using the shorthand property to see how the text decoration property actually, works. So we have this to be text decoration, and the very first value here would be the text decoration line value. So we have this to be underline, which is followed then by the text decoration color, which we already have as brown, then the text decoration style of dotted, and lastly the text decoration thickness of 10 pixels. So we are going to comment out all of these other properties we've defined. And when we save it, we are expected to get exactly the same results we had before. So if I save this and go back to our HTML, opening with live server, yes, so we basically have the same results we had before, nothing changes. So that's basically how the text decoration property actually works. So let's quickly touch the last two properties we have, or three, which is the text spacing, the text shadow, and the text transformation. So for this, okay, we'd actually comment this because we're still going to use this text to explore these other properties. So next we'll be seeing the line spacing and the word spacing property. So now you can see that this text, particular text, now we've actually commented the text decoration line, but now we'll be adding the word spacing and the line spacing property, which is under the text spacing group. So
So it's part of the item which will be picking up.
for the
So I think
word
all
spacing,
first
we
second.
have this to be word
Yeah.
spacing,
So as soon as tomorrow, should
and if we have this to
come
be
back.
20
Yes.
pixels, you would notice that there would be a lot of space between each of the words of the text we had on the screen before.
Like,
Yes, yeah. Yes, so this is how we have it. So you can see that now there there's about 20 pixels worth of spacing between each of the words of this entire text on this line. So that's how the word spacing actually works. So without wasting time, we'll be looking into the other one, which is the letter spacing. So we would also have this to be 20 pixels. And you now notice that within each word there will be an amount of space between each letters of each words. So here we have it. You can see the text, the letter spacing property. So we have an amount of space between each letters of each word. So you can see that the letters are just so independent on their own. They are not too close together as they were before. So this is how this particular, property actually works. So next we'll be looking into the text shadow. So we'll comment this out so we can have the default way they appear on the screen. So for the text shadow, we have this to be 5 pixels declared horizontally and 5 pixels vertically. Okay, yeah, so you can see now we have the same the same text content, but we have a particular one appearing on the other. So this is how the text shadow property works within CSS. So you can see the lorem ipsum text. We have two lorem ipsum text being on top of each other. So this is actually defined to be 5 pixels horizontally and 5 pixels vertically. So also we can add a color to this text shadow. This will be adding the red color. And here you can see now that the text one of the text actually has a shadow of the red color, and the other still maintains the the black color within its content. So like I said before, there is one more value we can actually add, which would actually give you the shadow effect of on this text. So the value for this actually goes in between the horizontal and vertical and also the color. So here we'll be having this to be 10 pixels, and you notice an actual shadow surrounding the entire text. Okay, so this is exactly how this is the shadow effect we have on this text. So as you can see, it has a reddish background, not really a background, but like a reddish shadow around the entire text. So that's how the text shadow property actually works. So the last property we'll be seeing is the text transformation. No. It's lowercase. Okay, so for the text transform property, it actually gives us the power to, convert the text to whatever form we want. So for this, we've assigned this property the uppercase value, and as we can see on the screen, the particular text here actually has all its words to be in uppercase, unlike the default paragraph element, which is in lowercase.
Sorry, Les, I can't see your screen.
Okay, I thought as much.